that say it's recording to everybody?
Yeah.
Perfect. So welcome to tonight's masterclass on how to tackle the tricky topics. So bear with me 1 second. I'm just trying to sort my slides out here. There we go. So before we delve into the tricky topics, we're going to do some quick intros. So tonight's masterclass is hosted by ourselves, Nugget Savings, and we are joined by Octopus Legacy. So firstly, I'm Harriet, and I'm one half of Nugget Savings. We were born in May 2023, no pun intended. And Nugget Savings was born off the idea of, as somebody who's saved for every eventuality in my life, I found myself discussing having a baby, parental leave, all of those kind of things. And I realised I knew nothing, and I should have been educated on it sooner, so I could have started saving sooner. The mind started whirring and some ideas were out there. And then that's when Katie contacted me. So over to you, Katie.
I'm Katie. I have a 2-year-old. And when I was on my maternity leave, I just was like woefully unprepared. I was running a business at the same time, so I didn't really take a proper maternity leave. And the finances just hit me in the face. And I just realised I knew nothing really about it. And I found it really tough. So when Harriet had an idea about tackling maternity leave, like all good things, we met at a pub and it went from there. And that's what we've got today.
Yeah, and then we are joined by Eliza. So over to you, Eliza.
Yeah, so I am Eliza and I work with Octopus Legacy, and we are a company that helps people plan for death and find support after loss. I joined the company after my granddad died quite suddenly, having made the most amazingly meticulous plan. And it included everything from the practical with his will to the quite emotional. So instructions on how to fix the leaky tap in his hallway that he had always been responsible for. And that completely transformed our family's experience of his death and made it that little bit easier. So I'm really excited to dive into this tricky topic with you today and hopefully bring it to life a little bit.
Thank you. So on to the agenda. So there's going to be 3 of us speaking. So myself, Katie, and Eliza. Eliza's going to be kicking things off with death, how to prepare for it, to talk about it. I promise you it won't be as morbid as it sounds. And then we will be touching on the tricky topics related to maternity leave and having a baby. And you'll leave the session ready to talk about the tricky topics, armed with a checklist to help you keep track and a special discount. It sounds a bit odd to say that I am super excited to talk about the subjects that we'll talk about, but these topics have been so relevant in my life for the past 2 years. Unfortunately, my dad passed away in August 2021, and there were many conversations which we didn't have and many plans that weren't put in place, and it made life a lot easier whilst trying to navigate grief. I said on one of our social media posts that talking about these things isn't dwelling on the inevitable, it's about a peace of mind for your loved ones. So on that note, buckle in, we're going to run through the tricky conversations to have. However, our aim is to make your life a lot easier. So just to let you know that we had an overwhelming response to tonight's masterclass. So in terms of trying to make life easier for everybody, instead of doing a Q&A at the end, we have included what Katie's going to be sending over on the chat, a link to submit questions. We will then be answering these after the session, and we'll be sending them up in a follow-up email tomorrow. So that, yeah, if you've got any questions, feel free to put them in the link that Katie has sent. And next, it is over to you, Eliza.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Harriet. And as mentioned, we are going to be talking about death today, but I hope that we can do it in a way that helps make these tricky conversations feel less daunting and leaves you feeling more confident about how to approach it and where to start going forward. So with the aim of lightening the mood a little bit, I wanted to share a clip from the wonderful Barbie movie. We at Octopus Legacy think about dying a lot. And not only is it the one thing that connects all of us as humans, we all die, but a lot of us here today, as Harriet has mentioned, and as I have as well, will have experienced someone that we love dying in our lives. And whilst we know that this is inevitable, there is a bit of a problem. And that is, we're just not planning for this event, the one event that we know that is going to happen. And we are, in the UK especially, sort of sweeping it under the carpet, practically, financially, and emotionally. And interestingly, from the survey that so many of you filled out, we saw that 83% of you didn't have a will in place. This is not to name and shame you at all. Hopefully we can make that whole process easier, but it makes complete sense because our brains are actually hardwired to avoid this topic. But there is a slight human cost to this. We put together some kind of top line numbers here, and I think we'll move on to the kind of more human part of it in a bit. But dying without a will is just more expensive. It's about £2,000 more expensive than dying with a plan in place. And emotionally, it can make that time more anxious and more stressful than it perhaps needs to be. And we say this because we know we have been through it. Octopus Legacy was founded in 2016 after Sam, our founder's mum, died very suddenly in a car accident. And as many of you will have experienced, grief is in itself very all-consuming, but with it comes a surprising amount of admin and paperwork and planning that you need to do at a very overwhelming time. And we know that Sam isn't alone. It's something that I've experienced, and I know that many of you here on this call will have experienced too. Sam can't be here today, sadly, but he has shared a quick video that I'm just going to play featuring a very special new guest. I hope this will play.
Do you need me to press play?
Here we are.
Oh no, there we go.
Hello everyone, my name is Sam Grice. I am the founder of Octopus Legacy, which was previously known as Guardian Angel, which is a company that helps people prepare for death and support them after loss. I've been the founder of the company for about 6 years now, and I founded Octopus Legacy after a few events, but mainly losing my mother in a car accident, and went through that as someone who had never really been exposed to death and dying before, and saw there was a big opportunity to help people get the preparations in place in case the end does happen. And a big part of that, which is why I'm super excited about a masterclass with Nugget about this subject matter, is obviously if you've got children, it is really important to have some of those preparations in place. And as you can probably tell by Theodore here, who is just in the process of waking up, I'm also recently had a newborn myself. And even as someone who runs a company that helps people in the UK prepare for death, it wasn't a particularly easy subject to have those conversations. And the main things we had to discuss was, firstly, if something was to happen to both of us, who would look after little Theodore here, who is wearing his Octopus Legacy t-shirt and looking incredibly cute right now. He is obviously just waking up. And the second thing was, if something was to happen to one of us, how do we want our assets and finances split to ensure that, one, we safeguard the person we love, our spouse, but also the child we leave behind. And so, yeah, fairly tough subject matter, but something very, very important. And that's why I'm super excited about a partnership with Nugget. And I'm really gutted I can't be there tonight to take you through some of this with my team, but I'm sure they'll do a fantastic job without me there. And little Theodore is just waking up. I actually think he looks like he might want some food. So I will probably love you and leave you for now. And yeah, very, very, very upset I can't be there tonight. I am traveling north for a wedding. But if you've got any questions at all and you want to reach out to me directly, I'm sure my team will share my email. I'm always very willing to share both information on preparing for death, but also maybe how to navigate work as a new parent. So thanks so much again for taking the time to attend tonight. Thank you.
Nice. That is the cutest member of our team to date. So after Sam lost his mum, he created Octopus Legacy, and we worked to make the experience of those of us who are left behind after a loss easier, so that no one has to go through the same experience. And we do that in two main ways. So through proactive planning and helping people get their ducks in a row ahead of time, and then also through bereavement support, so probate services and bereavement communities as well. Sorry, Harriet, I've just lost the ability to flick on. Oh, here we are. Let's come back. Great. So before we dive into some of the individual parts of an estate plan, we just wanted to talk through what this term means in general. So some of you might not be familiar with it, but an estate plan is essentially about creating a legally binding backup plan for what happens when you're ill or when you die. And it covers really all of the kind of big what ifs. So what if both you and your partner die? Who might look after your children? If you were to lose capacity, who would make decisions on your behalf? And if you were to die, who would cover your half of the mortgage or the kind of financial contributions and things like that? So we'll start by just introducing lasting power of attorneys. I think these tend to be the kind of lesser known part of an estate plan. So just to introduce what they are, if you haven't heard of them, a lasting power of attorney allows someone you trust to make important decisions or actions on your behalf if you're ever not able to. And usually it's used if you have an accident, if you become unwell, let's say you lose mental capacity for whatever reason, your LPA would then come into effect. And the decisions that this includes are financial and property related. So things like, could I sell your house? Could I pay key bills? Could I collect any benefits? Anything like that. And then health and your care as well. So where you live, your care in hospital, any decisions that might be taken in a medical emergency, so that your voice can be represented when you're not able to kind of speak for yourself. And I think it is just worth noting with this that being married or in a civil partnership with someone doesn't give them the legal right to make those decisions automatically on your behalf. So you would need a lasting power of attorney in place, which is a common misconception. So just worth thinking about as you're considering an estate plan more broadly. The next is life insurance. Somebody's already mentioned in the chat that this is something that they've recently updated, which is amazing. So the question with this is really, if you were to die, would someone be financially impacted by this? Let's say mortgage costs, day-to-day financial contributions. And if the answer to that question is yes, then it's probably worth considering getting some form of life insurance in place. What it offers is a single lump sum payment to someone that you choose that could cover big costs like paying off a mortgage, allow someone to take time off work to focus on children, or other day-to-day costs. And when you're thinking about the kind of worst case scenario, taking that big consideration of finances off a plate would be a really powerful gift to leave to the people that you love the most. And there are a whole load of ways that you can approach this. In general, you can play around with how long you want to be covered for, the amount that you would want to be paid out to your loved ones. And all of those decisions will allow you to affect your monthly premium, so the amount that you would be paying each month. And very broadly, the younger you are, the cheaper your monthly premium will be. So if this is something that you're thinking about getting in the future and for the long term, you could actually save money by sorting this sooner rather than later. And then there are wills. So a will is a legal document that decides what happens to everything that you own when you die. And interestingly, in the UK, this can be written on the back of a napkin. It can be written online, it can be written over the phone or in person, but as long as it's signed in the presence of two witnesses, it is a legally binding document. And if you're starting this process and feeling like there are quite a lot of things that I'm mentioning and you're not sure where to start, The short answer is, if you don't have a will, this is really the best first step that you can take to start to get your ducks in a row, as it were. And before we start talking about wills, there are quite a lot of terms that are attached to wills that can get in the way of understanding what is actually quite a simple document. And I just wanted to talk through them before we go into some of the detail. So the first that actually isn't on this slide is testator. So this is the person who writes the will. Then there are the witnesses. So your will isn't legally binding until it's signed by 2 witnesses, and that is what makes it a formal legal document. Then you have your executors. These are the people who carry out the wishes that you've laid out in your will. And if you're thinking about your will as a recipe, you can think about your executors as the people who follow that recipe and bake the cake on your behalf. Then you have the beneficiaries, and these are the people who inherit your worldly possessions. So to extend my cake metaphor, these are the people who would get a slice of that cake divided up between them. And then lastly, you have your guardians, which is a big consideration for parents. And these are the people who you would choose to look after your children if both you and your other legal guardian were to die. And this only applies if your children are under 18. So what happens if you don't have a will in place? I think there can be a lot of anxiety around this topic, and it's really important that from our perspective, it's not the end of the world if you don't have a will. In the UK, there is a default backup, which is called the laws of intestacy. And if you die without a will, these laws govern where your assets go, who they go to, and who would look after your children. And this works for a lot of people, but one size doesn't always fit all. We're all individuals, and these are quite big decisions, and lots of us will want to have a say over them. So who does need a will then? If any of the following apply for you, a will is going to be particularly important. So if you are a parent or a legal guardian of a child under the age of 18, a will is really important, as it allows you to choose who would look after them in the kind of worst case scenario. If you own a home or you're in a relationship but not in a civil partnership or married, a will can be really important to make sure that your partner is protected financially. And if you're separated but not divorced, it can be an important way of avoiding your assets going to someone that you might not want them to go to. And lastly, if you want to have a say in where any particular possessions or items go, then it can be really valuable. When we think about will writing, we often talk about it as a gift that you can give people. So a will isn't for you, it's a document that you will never use. And it is a plan that you're giving to the people that you love the most to save them time, money, and stress. It can avoid family arguments. It can simplify a complicated process and streamline an already stressful time. If that's something that is really important to you, a will can be a really powerful way of achieving that. So far we have touched on the practical sides of will writing, what they are, the terms that are involved. But as we've seen and as we know, we're humans, and navigating this process can be an emotional one, and to separate it from that kind of misses the point. And what we wanted to do with this masterclass is to help you navigate these tricky conversations. We saw that in the survey results, the most common word that appeared when you thought about planning for death was sad or anxious. And hopefully by providing some conversation starters and some things to consider, we can help you dive into this conversation and help it feel a little less overwhelming and anxiety inducing. So one of the first questions is, if the very worst happened, who would you want to look after your children? And for most parents, this is the most difficult part of writing a will. It's obviously incredibly emotional to think about this question. So to break it down into these considerations can help make it a little bit easier. So some things that you might want to ask yourself are, which of your friends or family's parenting style is most similar to yours? What kind of values would you want your children or children to be raised with? And then there's some really practical considerations that might be a bit easier to navigate. So things like location. Would you be happy for your child to move to a different area, move schools, move to a different part of the country or a different country altogether? And then some financial considerations. Would the guardians that you've chosen be able to take on your child or your children? And would they be willing to do so as well? So hopefully these can help make this a little bit of an easier conversation. Just to add, all of these photos that are coming up in these slides are pictures of our team with various members of their families. And yeah, with some brilliant stories behind them. So the next thing to consider is what and when you want your children to inherit. As much as sharing money is a really important part of a will, you might want to have a think about what are the sentimental items that you might want to give your children that they would really value in time. And would you want your child to be 18, which is the default when they inherit, or would you want them to be older? And if it is that you want them to be older than 18, it is just worth noting that this requires a slightly more bespoke will and setting up a trust. So that's something worth considering as you're navigating this process. And what would you want to happen to your house if you die, if you're lucky enough to be a homeowner? Some things to consider are whether you want your family to have to move or whether you really want them to be able to be in the kind of same environment. And that might impact how you divide up your estate. So you might choose to give your estate to one person and then to be divided up after they die. Or you might be happy for family members to move and divide it up between different people, which might result in your home being sold and then the profits being split between different beneficiaries. So that's just something to consider as you're navigating this process. Who do you want to be your executors? This is one of the other kind of bigger questions that people have when they're writing a will. And it's not a small task to give someone. So we really recommend choosing someone who, or multiple people who are really good with finances, who are incredibly organized, who you trust and are happy to take on this task, or considering a professional that they either work independently or alongside friends or family in order to take some of the burden of this job effectively off their plate. Oh, sorry. This is a picture of me and my granddad. When people think about planning for death and wills, I think it's really easy to think about this as quite a cold legal process, but it is ultimately about making life easier for the people you leave behind. And when we think about what would we want if anything happens to the people that we love, practical side of a will is really important, but actually it's some of the emotional elements that are going to be most impactful. And that's why we've created in our online will section and our will services a space where you can share your funeral wishes. If anyone's experienced this, you'll know that an incredibly difficult part of losing someone is planning the funeral and trying to remember what their favorite songs are and do them justice within this kind of short period of time. It's really difficult. And something that my granddad did was plan out his funeral from beginning to end, complete with a comedy sketch. And doing that not only took the pressure off and made that process much more easy to navigate, but it also meant the funeral was so much more him, and it felt like he was there in some way. It doesn't need to be a grim and morbid process. It can be a bit creative. There are questions that you can ask yourself, your partner, your friends, that can actually allow you to get to know them better as well. So why not ask them, if your life was a movie, what would the closing credits be? How would you want to make your funeral your own? What is the dress code you would choose? What food or drinks would you want to share? These are all conversations that we can have ahead of time that can be, maybe fun is too strong a word, but can be a lot more alive than we sometimes think. So the other thing to consider is how you want to write your will. There are a lot of different options, as I mentioned. We offer online, over the phone, or in-person services. A lot of people choose online options because they can do it from the comfort of their own home, and there's space to have those conversations. You still have on-hand support, and each will is going to be checked over by a will expert, and it can be easily updated over time. But if you want more interaction with a legal expert, then you can also opt for the over the phone or in-person options as well. So I've just included a QR code here that allows you to reach the Nugget specific page with the discount that will automatically be applied. And we'll also send a link round after the masterclass as well. So what happens when you've written your will? What is next? So the first thing is to remember to sign it. It's really easy to get to the end of this process and then forget the most important part, which is making sure that it's actually legally binding and can be used by the people that you love. It's worth storing it somewhere where it's safe and won't get damaged, but also where people can find it and access it if they need it. And then lastly, a will is a living document. Lives change and wills should too. So don't forget to update it. You might have another child, you may get married, you may buy a house, you may get divorced. It's really important to revisit your will and make sure that those wishes are still up to date. And it's worth doing that every 5 years or anytime any of those big events happen. But why stop there? We've covered a lot of the practical side. As I mentioned, when we think about an estate plan, it can be so much more than just sharing money. One of my very close friends sadly died last year, and the most precious thing that I own is a Christmas Day voice note that he sent me and this amazing playlist that we created on holiday one year together. And I think when we think about what do we want to leave behind, we can put together these incredible things that will be so valuable to the people that we love, not just when we're gone and in the context of death, but also while we're alive as an opportunity to connect with the people that we love now. So whether it's sharing recipes, deciding to write a letter every year to your child that you file away with these documents, or creating special playlists or bucket lists that you co-create together. We think that talking about death can be scary and daunting, but we also think that most of the most important and connecting conversations in our lives are whether it's deciding to become a parent, moving home, getting married. Why not talk about these things with the people you love? And you might be surprised, you might learn something about the people you know the best. So that's our kind of call to have this conversation and hopefully make it more engaging than you might have thought otherwise. So lastly, we have thrown quite a lot at you today. I know this is a meaty topic, but I hope that we've shown that this can be something that can be brought to life a bit. And we'll leave you with 3 different actions to get you started. These are a lot more simple than you will think. And if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me directly on the email that I shared here, or through our contact section of our website. But thank you so much for diving into what I know can feel like a very daunting topic, and being brave enough to have the conversation. And thanks for having us, Nugget.
Thank you very much. So over to you, Katie. You're on mute. Let me unmute you. I've asked to unmute you, so there we go.
Thank you. I'm here. Sorry, I was muting myself. Thank you so much, Liza. That was amazing. I learned so much, and I'm definitely going to get it sorted after this call. So we're in this section, we're just going to talk to you about tricky topics on maternity leave. And basically, it's going to be around talking finances with your partner. And our top tip, talking about money can be really hard. I find it really difficult. It's not my favorite thing to do with my partner by any stretch of the imagination. But our big tip for these next topics is to try and talk to your partner before the baby arrives, if possible. When the baby's here, you're both going to be sleep deprived, and this can really heighten emotions, and it's often just not a conducive environment to have level-headed, calm discussions where your emotions are stable. And also, when you're on maternity leave, imbalance in your relationship can come about really quickly. When I became a mum, one of the most shocking things to me was the disproportion of work in those initial stages, particularly like if you're breastfeeding. You're also at home a bit more, so you can naturally fall into a pattern of like you're doing a bit more of the household chores. It can feel like a real tightrope, and it does take a while for your relationship to settle down and for both of you to fall into a pattern which both of you are happy with. So if you're used to making your own money, it can be quite a shock to have so little of it all of a sudden. And we hear countless stories from women on their maternity leave about feeling awkward and disenfranchised about the fact that they have to ask their partner for a bit of cash so that they can meet their friends for a coffee, or, just go out for a wine with the girls. It can create a really weird atmosphere. There's a power dynamic shift in the relationship. So the best advice we can give on this topic is nip this in the bud and talk about it early doors before the baby even arrives. So, what do you actually need to talk about, and what do you need to decide? As one of you is likely to be on a lot less money on your maternity leave, you need to think about how that looks for your finances. So think about how your financial contributions are going to change during maternity leave, and like, how are you splitting the bills, if at all? Is the person on maternity leave going to be paying a lower percentage? Is the other partner going to cover it all? If neither of these options are available or possible, how much do you need to save to plug that gap? And when you're saving for maternity leave, please be saving together, both partners, to cover the shortfall. It shouldn't just be on the person that's going off. And then you really need to get into your budget. So how much do we anticipate you're going to spend on baby essentials every month? And what's your current savings situation? How much would you like to have saved before the baby arrives? Are there areas in your spending at the moment that you can cut back on to accommodate those baby-related expenses? And do you have a plan for unexpected costs like your boiler breaking? So obviously we would recommend using the Nugget Maternity Planner, which is available on our websites under the resources section. But it really breaks down every cost that you could possibly think of. Harriet's done an amazing job of creating all these formulas, and you can just input the numbers and it all magics it up for you and tells you exactly how much you need to save. Also want you to think about how you can ensure that you're both feeling valued, recognised for your contributions during this time, both financially and in terms of caregiving and parenting. Communication is really key on this. So praising each other, both people. So the person that's going out to work on no sleep, praise, and the person who's at home with the baby all day, praise. Just making sure that you recognise the work going on both sides. And being able to have enough funds so that both of parents feel confident, free, have the freedom to go out and have a coffee and see their friends without having guilt attached. And also there are certain things that you're going to want to safeguard. So what activities or spends are precious to you as a family or vital for you and your sanity during maternity leave? So holidays, days out, maybe it's going to the gym on your own for a couple of hours to just keep yourself on an even keel. Make sure that you build those things because they are vital for surviving maternity leave in one piece. Build it into your budget as essentials. That's me.
Thank you. So retirement, so pensions, why does it matter? Retirement might seem far off, but there's a significant financial gap that exists right now when it comes to pensions. You might have seen that it's been highlighted quite a lot in the press recently around the gender pension gap. Women are ending up with way less saved for retirement than men. According to Scottish Widows, it's around £123,000 less. And according to the Pensions Policy Institute, a girl would need to start saving from 3 years old to match the pension of a man who began at 22. The pension gap doesn't exist at the start of your career. Things take a turn once women leave work for caring responsibilities. If women do return to work, it's often on a part-time basis, which hits the amount that they can pay into their pension when they return to work, and the gap starts to widen. The average woman has a 10-year career gap due to childcare and other factors, according to Now Pensions, which results in a £39,000 loss in pension savings. So, what can women do to mitigate this? Well, firstly, you could just retire with a much smaller pension than a man if you don't do anything. One thing that you can do is to pay 6% more into your pension than your male counterparts through your working life. A workaround for this is to sign up for child benefit in the mother's name, and that ensures that you continue to build up your state pension entitlements whilst you're out of the workplace. Another thing we suggest is, whilst you're pregnant, try to increase how much you pay into your workplace pension. So this will help mitigate the effect of the lower contributions while you're on maternity pay. We completely understand that this isn't possible for everybody, because whilst you're pregnant, you may be saving for your maternity leave, but if it is possible, then it is something to think about. Another thing to note is, if your employer matches your contributions, then they must pay in the same amount whilst you're on maternity leave. So if you decide to up your contribution before you head on maternity leave and can continue to do that whilst you're on maternity leave, they will have to give a higher amount, but on your original salary, not on the salary that you're receiving whilst you're on maternity leave. So here comes the tricky conversations. Would your partner contribute to your pension pot? If your partner can afford to, they could also cover pension contributions whilst you're taking care of your children. With private pensions, anyone can pay into someone else's pension, and they can pay up to £2,880 a year into your pension, which will be boosted to £3,600 with tax relief. So doing this could have a huge impact on your own personal pension gap. We've seen some pushback on this from some men when we asked the question, and they said that the money could be used more effectively elsewhere, and that it's an unnecessary precaution if you're married, because you'd be protected in case of divorce. However, that isn't correct. The data doesn't show this, unfortunately. Research is out there to suggest that 2/3 of divorces didn't consider pensions, and only 12% of financial settlement in divorce contain a pension sharing order. So relying on someone else for your income in retirement can be very risky. And this is one way to mitigate that. You shouldn't receive less of a pension because you were off work looking after both of your children. So, and kind of circling back to Eliza's topic, pensions have their own system when it comes to who inherits what. So pension savings aren't usually covered in a will because they normally fall outside of a person's estate. So I know what you're thinking, is this potentially another form for me to complete? And unfortunately it is, but it's not that hard. So to ensure that your pensions savings are inherited by the person that you want to get them, you need to keep your pension provider up to date. So lots of pension providers let you do this online. On my pension provider's website, it's really simple. Just go to my account settings and I can change who I want the beneficiary to be. Other pension providers offer templates known such as letter of wishes or a nomination of beneficiaries. And this is just a form that you can complete and send to them. And like Eliza said, it's best getting this updated like every 5 years or every time something significant happens in your life. I can speak firsthand about this. I was looking up on a pension provider's website and it had a quote which said, if you don't nominate your beneficiaries, those you leave behind will be left to pick up the pieces as what could be a difficult time. They could have more paperwork to go through and decisions to make they weren't expecting. And unfortunately, this is the case for myself when my dad died. He hadn't completed his letter of wishes, and each pension provider had different rules on how they would distribute this. And we are nearly 2.5 years on and we are finally nearly sorted. So keep those up to date with your pension providers. When you're thinking about your will, think about your pensions too. So, and then finally, that's it from our tricky topics. And we loved hearing from Eliza on her tricky topics. We wanted to say a huge thank you for joining us. We did allow time for question and answers, but due to the amount of people that responded to the event, it would have been tricky to answer those in bulk. So what we have done is we've included a QR code here, and that will link you to a Slido where you can ask any questions that you want. And Katie, can you just reshare that in the chat again, just so people have it if it's not at the top of their chat? And yeah, you can ask any questions on anything we've covered tonight, and we will be sure to answer those and send them around tomorrow. In tomorrow's email, you'll also receive a link to this recording, so you can catch up at any time. And if you've not managed to watch it together, if you have a partner, then maybe that's something fun you could do over the Easter weekend, rewatch the recording. And we also have a really helpful checklist. I know we've thrown a lot of content at you today, but the checklist will help break it down and you can tick along as you go. So yeah, from me personally, I want to say a huge thank you to Octopus Legacy for being here. Always had a huge part of my heart, Octopus. So happy to be partnering with you on this. And I'll pass it over to the two of you for any final words. Do I need to unmute you both?
After you, Eliza.
I was just going to say a huge thank you to inviting us along. We love what you're doing, and you're really opening up a tricky conversation that doesn't get enough light, and it's so important. If anyone has any questions and wants to contact us directly, please just reach out. We've got a team of wonderful estate planners that we can book you in with on a free call where you can talk through your different options as well. So yeah, get in touch, and thanks for having us again.
Brill. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
And yeah, look out for the email from us. It will have all the content you need.
Okay. Take care. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.